Sounds very interesting.
Really?
I've been there.
Well, Phelan, that's the easiest thing there is.
You've got a point there, Sonny.
But I know I've been there.
I wasn't there.
You know, that sounds good. Great.
Really? Well,
You really think so?
You really think so?
The Icelander teaches us a lesson.
All right. We'll observe 1 minute of silence.
Something woke me up.
It took us a while to realize what it was. The silence.
It's not whether you did it right or did it wrong.
or did it well, or did it badly. I want you to be aware what you as the individual felt as you did it. Because as you did it, and as you felt it, is the God expression or God ray expression that you are. Probably there is not anything remotely similar between what any one of us in this room felt, and there is absolutely no reason why God should be limited to a single expression of divinity. Perhaps we were close. If we visualize it in terms of a circle of 360 degrees, perhaps Francel here was at degree 1, Bill was at degree 10, Hal was at degree 20, Joan was at degree 30, Michelle over here was at degree 60. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What is important is you are aware of being in touch with that aspect of your divinity which you felt. Did you hear it, my friends? What is important, it is that you are aware of being in touch with that aspect of divinity which you felt, not them. Not the person sitting next to you, or in front of you, or behind you. Not your wife, your mother, your grandmother, your child, your grandchild, your neighbor, your boss, your employee. They have their aspect of divinity which they feel. This is the entire purpose of meditation, to bring us in touch with our own individual aspect of divinity. Not the divinity that Krishna felt, not the divinity that Moses felt, not the divinity that Muhammad felt, nor Jesus, nor Gandhi, however wonderful these beings may be. That's not what we're concerned with. Each and every one of these people taught, without exception, seek ye first the kingdom within, and then all other is added on to you. You've never found a spiritual teacher who has ever told you to find the kingdom of Joe, of Mary, of Bill, of June, of Alice. It's always the kingdom within. Always. Let me tell you something. If you ever find anybody purporting to be a spiritual teacher who tells you that only by using their system, or my system if they may call it such, can you achieve the goal of unfoldment, get the fastest car you can get. Lamborghini, I think, today is the fastest one you can buy. And head north fast. And keep going. Don't even stop the gas. You won't need it. You can go on spirit. Not because they're cheating, that's not the reason. It's because they don't know what they're talking about. That's all. There are loads of these people out there who sincerely believe that they've got the system. The system. And I would like to ask you this question, pure, plain common sense. Why would any particular group, Orange County Psynetics, Anaheim Psynetics, Corona Light in Corona, Aquarian Horizon in Santa Barbara, whatever it might be, why should any particular group, why should any particular teacher have a corner on the spiritual market? In sheer pragmatical common sense, it don't make sense. It does not add up. It doesn't add up. therefore, to work. Yes, Bill?
I think what I hear from people like who are seeking that is they're not seeking for the truth, they're trying to seek for the greatest transparency of it. You know, they said, well, this teaching is great, but they seem to be too overly intellectual. And this group says, well, it's very devotional, but it doesn't stimulate the whole person, like the mind and so forth. So it seems like the groups are saying, we're the greater transparency. You see what I mean?
Yes,
and,
I do.
So what do you think about that? People think in those terms.
That is what they need to think. And that's all right. Which brings us to the next point. Whatever divinity we touch within ourselves, let us never make the satanic mistake of thinking that it is the only expression of divinity that there is. It is the expression of divinity at that moment, within that echelon of that second. But then so also is the feeling that you have 10 minutes later as you get in your car and drive down the freeway. And you're not too happy because it's 4:30 in the afternoon and there's far too much traffic. And you're not too happy with the way the other guy is driving. That is also a feeling of divinity. And when we make the recognition that our feeling on the freeway at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon or wherever it is, on whatever freeway you happen to be on, when we make the recognition that this too, this feeling that we have, is divinity in expression, now we have enhanced the entire and broadened the entire spectrum of our divinity. The other thing, you touched on it, Bill, is what the groups do, or what individuals do. They think that the divinity that they express in their 15 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half-hour meditation, which they do in the morning, in the evening, or whenever they do it, that's it. And all the other is a crop. That's where we fall out of the saddle. Let me give it to you in my own experience. Not because my experience is better. It happens to be my experience, and it is the one with which I'm acquainted. I'm not acquainted with your experience. And most of you who know me reasonably well know I always talk from reality. I never talk, well, let's suppose. When I get up in the morning, I have a pattern. As I said to somebody a little earlier this evening, I'm very British. First thing I do is put on my robe and go down and make myself a cup of tea. How more British can you be than that? And having made myself a cup of tea, while I'm waiting for it to be in an edible state, meaning I don't have an asbestos-lined tummy, while I'm waiting for it to cool so that I can drink it, I go and I do my first meditation of the day, which usually lasts 5, 6, 7 minutes, I don't know, approximately that. Now when I stand up, as I happen to be sitting to do that, when I stand up to walk into my kitchen, to remove the tea bag from the teacup, I have not emerged from my divine state. So what's the first thing then I do? I literally bless the cup of tea that I have just made. I say to the cup of tea, I bless and pronounce you good. This is what I do. And I continue to bless at that particular moment my own body, which is the temple in which I dwell. And I bless it as being the expression of my divinity, which I have brought forth as from the beginning. That means at that moment, as I make my cup of tea, I become aware of the tea pickers on the eastern slopes of the hills in Ceylon. I become aware of the shippers that shipped it from wherever, Bombay, who, it doesn't matter where they shipped it from, and eventually shipped it into Los Angeles Harbor. I'm aware of the people who built the aqueduct, which brought the water from Northern California into my faucet in Los Angeles. I'm aware of the people in Gelson's food store who brought the stuff out of inventory in the storeroom and put it out on the shelves, and of the young lady to whom I paid when I paid at the checkout. And I tell you this not that you shall know I shop for groceries in Gelson's. That's not the reason. I tell you this because we all shop for groceries somewhere. We all drink tea, we drink coffee, we drink 7-Up, we drink Coke. It doesn't matter what we drink. And in order to get that Coke can up to our mouth, there is a whole line of expression of divinity to make that moment possible. And the purpose of meditation is to bring us into the state so that we can be aware in that moment. Do you hear it? After you, Clyde, after you, Cecil. Mine,
Thank
yours?
you. Mine.
Reminds you of a British movie I once saw. Two parties who were denying the responsibility for the spy. He's yours. No, he's not. He's mine. Incidentally, have you ever noticed in movies that the enemy always have spies and we always have agents?
Right.
It's great. It's great.
How convenient.
Yeah. They always have spies and we have agents. Okay. Countervations to that. So what we're talking about here, the entire purpose of the stillness that we create in the meditative process, as put forth in the 46th Psalm, be still and know that I am God. This stillness that we're talking about is not an absence of movement. That's not what the scripture is talking about at that point. It's an absence of conflict with the movement of which we are a part. Do you hear it? That's not what stillness is. Stillness does not mean no movement. Stillness means harmony, in which there is no resistance to the onflowing expression of divinity. So as I take my tea bag out of my cup, let's not kid ourselves, it's a mug. Quite appropriate. Couldn't be born in Ireland for nothing, right? It's a mug. As I take my tea bag out, I am fully aware in that moment of the total connection between my enjoyment of the tea, or whatever it may be, or as I did tonight, I had a glass of wine with my dinner. For a few moments I paused before having my dinner and I said a short grace. And I was aware in that grace of this whole chain that brought that glass of wine and that food to that table. And don't tell me you can't do it, yes you can. You don't have to see every farmer and every shipper and every trucker and every store clerk and every vintner. That's not what we're talking about. It's the awareness that the identity of those who participated in the process of bringing that glass of wine and that platter of food to your table at that moment is still the divine expression which I am. Not will be, not might be, not can be if I'm good. There is no such thing. You never get good, so you're never going to make it. At least I'm not going to make it. I never get good. I gave up trying to be good a long time ago. My mother pointed out to me by the time I was 7 that I was never going to be good, so I thought, great, I don't have to be good.
Oh, what a relief it is.
Woo, what a relief, yeah. Thank you, Mom. Yeah. Where's the cookie jar? No, it has nothing to do with the quality that society sees us as possessing. Nothing whatever. This is very important, Because most of us carry the image that society has put upon us. Phrases like, the good wife. Now, what the hell is a good wife? A good husband. What the hell is a good husband? A good father. What's a good father? A good mother. A bad mother. A bad father. A bad wife. A bad husband. A bad lawyer. What do these things actually mean? The whole of my life, and I've done a lot of counseling, I've never met a bad wife. I've never met a bad husband. I've never met a bad child. I've never met a bad parent. I've never met a bad employer. I've never met a bad employee. Because the person sitting in my consulting room told me about their bad wife, or about their bad husband, or about their bad child, or about their bad employer, or about their bad employee. Did you hear it? Have any of us ever, really and truly in our society, considers ourselves the bad one in a situation? No, 99 times out of 100, we blame somebody else for our condition. Yes, Bill?
Yeah, I remember one person stated to me, says, you know, I remember my mom and dad, they were almost like parents to me. You know, so
Close.
they had the same life.
Close.
Yeah. Right.
Close. So what was, yes?
I do feel we're conscious. We do know when we're wrong, even when we're blaming someone else.
Sure we do. Sure. There, she's got it. That is the point, and that is the opportunity to make the change right at that moment. If you're blaming, or we are blaming, not you, if we are blaming somebody else at a given moment, and we know, because we always know, deep down we know, that is our greatest opportunity for making the change in life, of which Scripture talks when it says, in the twinkling of an eye it shall be changed. It does take spiritual courage. It does take courage for the very first time to say, you know, I just lied to you. What I told you is not true. Just take courage. No question about it.
The subconscious mind don't always let you know at the time that you're wrong.
You better believe it. And it's not what other people think whether you're right. You yourself, you know. That's right. You yourself know. And we see the only problem we have, we try to then extend that into a general law in the society. You cannot extend it into a general law in the society. I cannot say what's wrong for me is wrong for Michelle over here, any more than Michelle can say what's wrong for her is wrong for me. What may be wrong for Michelle may be wonderful for me, and what's wrong for me may be wonderful for Michelle. I mean, if it's wrong for me, it's also wrong for Bill. But that's different.
Well, my jokes are right for you.
No, they're not.
Tell
That's
the
my
truth.
problem.
So are his parents. Huh?
Beg pardon?
So are his parents.
Yeah.
No, my mom and dad.
Well, some parents are unfortunate, Joan, you know.
They had
Okay.
rough karma.
Uh-huh.
So what we're talking about here, the whole of the purpose of the meditation process is to be able to reach the point that you just referred to, where we can reach the point where we hear and see and know the truth. And the truth is that it's our responsibility in the first place. Yes, we are blaming the other person. Yes, we are lying unjustly, or we are saying something unjustly. And this is the golden opportunity. It's one thing meditation does for us. It gives us a golden opportunity to change our life. It's what is meant under the sign of Aries, which says, I make all things new. It's very interesting that because the sign of Aries represents the dawning of the Christ consciousness. And the dawning of the Christ consciousness is no more and no less than the acceptance of personal divine responsibility. That is actually the birth of Christ consciousness in consciousness.
Would you say that again? Acceptance?
The acceptance of the birth of divine consciousness in self.
Thank you.
not in others, not in an institution, is accepting that my words and my actions, as I speak to people and as I touch people, is my divinity expressing. And until we do this, and here this is maybe expressed at a personality level and therefore I will not be dogmatic, and until we do this, we cannot really love another person. There will be something missing. And what is missing, we can give them physical, we can give them emotional, we can give them mental, but we cannot give them divinity. But when I recognize that I, Christopher, in taking my tea bag out of a mug, am divinity in action, then when I speak to someone with words of kindness and with words of compassion and with words of understanding, then I can also speak with the sense of divinity. When I make a commitment to someone to do something or to be somewhere, I am making that commitment through my divinity. And therefore, it becomes very easy to keep my commitment.
It could take a long course, a good many years to get to that place.
Not necessarily.
Well, you even recognize it.
Sometimes.
I've only gotten a few years.
Sometimes it takes a few years. It only takes, now hear this, all of you with your golden ear, it only takes one recognition. One. Not 1,000, not 1,000,000, not 1,000,000,000. Now notice I said a recognition. Let's look at this word very carefully. I use the word very deliberately, very consciously. Some of you know I have a thing about words. Recognition is to recognite. What does recognite mean? It means to light once again. It means to light once again the divinity or the awareness of the divinity that you are. That's what it means. When we have a recognition, it's almost like saying a reignition. It's to relight the awareness of the divinity that we are, that we have occluded sometime in the past. Now we can go into a long, long spiel and blame a lot of societies and a lot of people and a lot of institutions for our occlusion. It doesn't matter what the reasons for the occlusion were. It is not important. It comes into the story of Mary Magdalene and Jesus when he asked her a very simple question. And he wanted to know if she condemned herself. She said, no, she didn't. His response to this was, therefore I can find no sin within you. And that is Priestley. I've shortened it quite considerably, but we got to the essence. I can find no sin within you. Once we come to this recognition, what we come to the recognition of is this. This is what the recognition is. That's why when you sat there a little while ago, to whatever degree you changed your polarity, you changed it. You changed it, not me. You changed it. You changed the expression of your mentality or your mental body. You changed the expression of your emoting process or your emotional body. And last but by no means least, to a probably a lesser degree, because of a time factor here, you change to some degree of your physical body. Because it takes approximately 23 days for a spiritual manifestation to manifest itself in, thank you, John, in the physical body. And let me explain what I mean by that. If you are undergoing a current physical disorder, let's say, or disharmony, rather than, notice I did not say disease, because that conjures up thoughts. Let's go beyond what I'm saying. If you are currently undergoing a physiological disorder or disharmony, and you take and focus your attention upon your body in the following manner. I bless and pronounce this temple in which I dwell to be good and whole. It will probably take a total, and not more than, a total of 23 days to totally eradicate from the physical body the causative agent that's causing that disorder. Because there is a cycle of between spirit and matter of approximately 23 days. There is a cycle between spirit and emotions of about 28 days. And there's a cycle between spirit and mental processes of 33 days. Yes, ma'am.
Two questions on that. You would think it would be the reverse, because the physical is a result of the image of the emotions, and the emotions are the result of the image of the mind. You would think you would start off with the mind first, and that would be quicker, and that would bleed down. And then second of all, what's
Excellent.
the cycle of the 7 years?
Excellent. Thank you. Hope I did my homework. When the I, which is consciousness, puts a thought into the mind, to begin with, the mind does not retain the concept in its totality straight away. But it nonetheless, being generous, passes on the concept to the emotions immediately. It's not immediate, but it's almost immediate. We're talking about in split seconds. We don't need to get into that at the moment here, so we're not dealing with. The emotions very quickly, not quite so quickly as between here and here, communicate the message to the physical. The physical takes more of the essence of the message, or retains more of the essence of the message, because there's nowhere else for it to go beyond that. Therefore, it retains more of the essence of the message than does the emotions. The mind is an ephemeral thing, mercurial in fact. The emotions are a little less so. They hold very little of it, and the physical body takes the brunt of the essence that's passed down.
The buck passes,
The buck is passed down the line. That's exactly what happens. But, unfortunately, in that process, the mind also had a preconceived notion, which might be sick body. And it takes 33 days to eliminate the notion of sick body. That make sense?
32 days of an affirmation, I mean?
Not necessarily to repeat the affirmation, but it certainly enhances it to do so. This is why it is a good idea, and I recommend it, that each morning when we wake, we bless and pronounce our body whole. And we bless and pronounce the day that we are about to carry out as good. Yes?
How does this relate to many spontaneous remissions, instantaneous healing?
I think they're less spontaneous than we probably think. They're simply spontaneous to the observer. I think the process has already begun. For example, let me explain to you. There are several well-known, I mean publicly well-known healers in this country, and I will refer to two, some of which maybe some of you have experienced, the particular ladies. I'll refer first of all to Catherine Ponder, and I will secondly refer to Catherine Kuhlman. In order for you to go to Catherine Kuhlman to be healed, you have already begun the process to accept the fact that you can be healed spiritually anyway. Otherwise you wouldn't be sitting in the Shriner Auditorium or the Anaheim Convention Center or wherever it happens to be and waiting for Catherine Kuhlman to come along and do her thing. I think what happens in this particular case, the entire spirit of the being is keyed and tuned already to be changed. Which, don't misunderstand me, this is not detracting from Catherine Kuhlman or Catherine Ponder or anybody else. That's not what we're talking about.
You mean the condition must be put on hold until they arrive at
Oh. Oh, well, I guess that sounds logical.
Really?
That's very interesting.
Fascinating, Doctor.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.